What if the price of redemption was the very love you sought to reclaim? The streets of Chicago in the 1930s were alive with the hum of jazz, the shouts of street vendors, and the whispers of secrets best left unspoken. Among the shadows of this vibrant yet tumultuous city, Clara DeLuca stood at a crossroads, her heart heavy with the weight of dreams unfulfilled and wounds unhealed. With a spirit forged in the fires of struggle, Clara yearned for a life beyond the confines of her modest upbringing, a life filled with love, laughter, and a sense of belonging. Clara was a young woman in her early 20s, her dark hair pulled back into a simple bun, framing a face that bore the marks of both resilience and vulnerability. Her hazel eyes, often clouded with uncertainty, sparkled with the flicker of hope. Raised in a small, cramped apartment with her ailing mother and younger brother, she had learned the harsh realities of life too soon. The Great Depression had ravaged their neighborhood, leaving families like hers to scrape by on meager wages. Yet, Clara dreamed of becoming a nurse, of healing the sick, of bringing comfort to those in pain. She envisioned herself walking the halls of a bustling hospital, her white uniform a symbol of hope and compassion. But dreams often come at a price, and the price for Clara was steep. The burdens of responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. With her mother unable to work and her brother still in school, Clara found herself trapped in a cycle of endless toil. The fire in her heart flickered dangerously low, threatened by the relentless grind of survival. As she navigated the bustling streets of her neighborhood, Clara was constantly reminded of the stark division between those with power and those without. She witnessed the injustices that permeated her world, children going hungry while gangsters flaunted their wealth, the sick unable to afford care while the rich indulged in excess. Each day the inequities carved deeper into her soul, igniting a sense of urgency within her. The main conflict in Clara's life emerged from her deep-seated desire for family and connection, especially as whispers of her estranged father, Al Capone, began to seep into her everyday life. Once a powerful figure in the criminal underworld, Capone had been imprisoned, leaving Clara with a tangled web of emotions. The father she had never known was a man whose very name struck fear and admiration in equal measure. Now rumors swirled that he was seeking to reconnect with his family, a prospect that filled Clara with both hope and dread. Could she embrace the father who had chosen a life of crime over family? Could she reconcile her longing for connection with the fear of the darkness that surrounded him? As Clara grappled with these questions, a devastating event shattered her already precarious existence. The family's meager savings were wiped out when her mother succumbed to illness, leaving Clara alone to care for her brother and to make sense of her shattered dreams. In her grief, Clara found herself at an emotional crossroads, questioning her path and her purpose. The weight of her failures crushed her spirit, leaving her feeling lost amidst the chaos of her life. Yet, within that darkness, a spark ignited, a determination to not only survive, but to fight for a better future. The streets of Chicago became a character in Clara's journey, a backdrop of both challenge and opportunity. The city pulsed with energy, and within its bustling corners, Clara discovered unexpected friendships. She met Rosa, a fierce and wise street vendor who had weathered her own storms. Their bond formed over shared struggles, and through Rosa's encouragement, Clara began to embrace her potential. Together they navigated the treacherous waters of their environment, confronting the systemic injustices that permeated their lives. Clara learned that solidarity and altruism could be powerful tools for change, igniting a flame of activism within her. But the stakes were high. With her father's looming presence and the shadows of his past threatening to engulf her, Clara faced a daunting reality. Would she allow the chaos of his legacy to dictate her future? Or would she carve out her own path, one defined by compassion and resilience? The struggle for identity, belonging, and justice intertwined in Clara's journey, marking the beginning of a fight not just for herself, but for those who had suffered in silence for far too long. The city of Chicago, with its vibrant yet chaotic spirit, would either break her or ignite the fire of change she so desperately sought. Clara DeLuca felt the oppressive weight of grief settle around her, like a heavy fog, as she stood at the small wooden table, its surface littered with bills and the remnants of her mother's illness. The reality of her situation pressed upon her chest, making each breath a laborious effort. With her mother gone, the burdens of responsibility had multiplied overnight, and the world felt colder and more unforgiving. The meager income she earned from the local pharmacy, barely enough to keep her and her younger brother Marco afloat, was not nearly sufficient to cover rent or food. Each day brought new challenges, testing her ability to cope with loss and the crushing demands of survival. As she navigated through the bustling streets of Chicago, Clara felt the isolation deepen. The vibrant jazz cafes and lively street corners that once filled her with hope now echoed with laughter that felt foreign and unattainable. She passed familiar faces, neighbors who once exchanged warm greetings now cast down their eyes, a silent acknowledgement of shared hardship. Their struggles mirrored her own, each person a reflection of the city's relentless pulse. Yet Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, trapped within a reality she hadn't chosen. Her first encounter with betrayal came unexpectedly. Rosa, her mentor and friend, had promised to help Clara secure a better-paying job at a local hospital, a lifeline that Clara clung to as she envisioned a future where she could care for others. But when Clara arrived for an interview, she discovered that Rosa had taken the position for herself, leaving Clara in the dust. The sting of betrayal cut deep, not only for the lost opportunity, but for the shattering of trust in the one person she believed understood her plight. Doubt crept in, whispering insidiously that perhaps Clara's dreams were always destined to slip through her fingers. "Why didn't you tell me?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the tremor betraying her vulnerability. "Things are tough, Clara. I need this job," Rosa replied, her eyes darting away, avoiding Clara's gaze. "You'll find something else." Clara felt her heart sink, the hope she had nurtured now tainted with a bitter edge. The betrayal illuminated the harsh realities of their world, how survival sometimes necessitated painful choices. It was a lesson she hadn't wanted to learn, but as she walked away from the cafe, she realized that her journey would be rife with obstacles, testing her resolve and her spirit. In the days that followed, Clara attempted to navigate the new landscape of her life. She sought solace in her brother, who despite his youth was a beacon of light in her darkening world. Marco's laughter, though strained, reminded her of the joy they had once shared, a reminder that their bond was worth fighting for, even amid chaos. But as the weight of their circumstances pressed down on her, Clara found herself withdrawing, struggling to maintain the facade of strength. Her dreams of nursing seemed increasingly out of reach, overshadowed by the daily grind of making ends meet. One evening, Clara joined a local community meeting, organized by a coalition of women advocating for better working conditions. It was there she met Eleanor, a fiery activist whose passion ignited something within Clara. Eleanor spoke boldly about the need for solidarity among women, urging them to break free from their chains of oppression. Clara felt a flicker of recognition in Eleanor's words, a call to arms that resonated deeply within her. "Together, we can change our fate," Eleanor proclaimed, her voice rising above the crowd. "We must demand what we deserve." Clara listened intently, her heart racing with the possibilities of collective strength. But self-doubt gnawed at her resolve. Would she have the courage to join this fight? The temptation to retreat into her own struggles loomed large, whispering that her voice didn't matter. Yet, as she glanced around the room, she saw the faces of women who had endured their own battles, their resilience a testament to the power of community. Clara realized she was not alone. She was part of something larger, a movement that could reshape their realities. Yet as she began to step into this new role, challenges arose. Clara's commitment to activism put a strain on her relationship with Marco, who longed for her presence and reassurance. He was too young to fully understand the complexities of their situation, and Clara's involvement in community organizing often meant late nights and missed dinners. Their once harmonious home now felt fraught with tension, each disagreement a reminder of the precarious balance Clara was attempting to maintain. "Clara, you need to be here for me." Marco's voice cracked with frustration one evening as Clara prepared to leave for yet another meeting. "I can't keep doing this alone." "I'm trying to make things better for us, Marco," Clara snapped, the weight of her own frustrations bubbling to the surface. "I need you to trust me." In that moment, she saw the fear in his eyes, a reflection of her own insecurities. Clara felt the sting of guilt, realizing that in her quest for a better future, she had inadvertently created distance between them. The realization struck her hard. Her dreams were intertwined with her brother's well-being, and if she didn't find a way to bridge that gap, she risked losing the very person she fought for. As the days turned into weeks, the city's vibrant energy continued to pulse around Clara, a constant reminder of the life she yearned for, but struggled to attain. Each step forward felt like a battle, yet with every setback, Clara discovered a deeper well of resilience within herself. Her journey through grief, betrayal, and newfound purpose was just beginning, and she understood that the road ahead would require not just strength, but a willingness to confront her own vulnerabilities and fears. The stakes were higher than ever, but Clara knew she had to fight, not just for her dreams, but for the family she held dear and the community that needed her voice. As Clara immersed herself deeper into the community organizing efforts, she found herself facing new and unexpected challenges that tested her resolve and commitment. Just as she began to feel a sense of purpose, the city's political climate shifted dramatically. A new mayor was elected, one who had campaigned on promises of reform, but quickly pivoted towards austerity measures that threatened funding for essential public services. Clara's community, already struggling, now faced the real possibility of losing access to vital resources like healthcare and education. The news hit Clara like a physical blow, and she felt the weight of despair wrapped tightly around her heart. The meetings she attended were charged with urgency, but amidst the fervor, Clara could feel her own spirit beginning to fray. The emotional toll was becoming evident. Sleepless nights spent worrying about Marco, coupled with the relentless pressure of activism, left Clara exhausted. She became short-tempered and found it increasingly difficult to mask her anxiety. The very flame of determination that had once burned bright within her now flickered precariously. Marco, sensing the shift in his sister's demeanor, grew increasingly worried. "Clara, you're always out. I hardly see you anymore, and when you're home, you seem distant," he said one night, his voice laced with concern. This was the third time that week he had expressed his feelings, and Clara could see the toll it was taking on him. She felt guilty for dragging him into her whirlwind of responsibilities, yet the thought of stepping back from the fight felt like surrender. The tension between them escalated when Clara accidentally missed Marco's school performance, an event he had been excited about for weeks. When she rushed home, breathless and apologetic, she found him sitting alone in the dim light of their living room, tears streaming down his face. "You didn't even come," he choked out, his hurt palpable. Clara's heart shattered at the sight of her brother's disappointment. Meanwhile, the community meetings grew more intense, with Eleanor calling for direct action against the mayor's cuts. Clara, inspired by Eleanor's passion, found herself swept up in a plan to stage a protest. But as the date approached, she was torn between her commitment to the cause and her responsibilities at home. The internal conflict gnawed at her, and she felt the familiar doubt creep back in. Was she a good sister or a good activist? Could she truly balance both? As the protest drew near, Clara received an unexpected phone call. It was Rosa, who after weeks of silence reached out to apologize. The sincerity in her voice was tinged with desperation. "I messed up, Clara. I didn't think about how it would affect you. Can we meet?" Clara hesitated, remembering the raw pain of betrayal that Rosa had inflicted. But the vulnerability in Rosa's plea stirred something within her, perhaps a longing for the friendship they once shared. When they met, Clara was surprised to find Rosa visibly shaken. "I lost my job too," she admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't know it would come to this. I thought I was making the right choice. I'm so sorry." As Clara listened, she felt an odd mixture of sympathy and resentment. Rosa's struggles mirrored her own, but the hurt of betrayal lingered like a bitter aftertaste. That night, Clara lay in bed, wrestling with her emotions. Her thoughts drifted to Marco, who needed her. But she also felt a pull towards the fight for justice, the passion that had ignited within her. The weight of her decisions felt heavy, and she questioned whether she had the strength to endure another setback. The next day, Clara made a decision. She would attend the protest, but she would also prioritize her relationship with Marco. She began to strategize how to involve him, wanting him to feel included rather than neglected. Perhaps there was a way to bridge the gap between her activism and her role as a sister. At the protest, Clara was swept into the chaos of voices demanding change. The energy was electric, but as she stood there, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, Rosa, holding a sign and shouting alongside the other protesters. A wave of emotions coursed through Clara. The betrayal now felt like a distant wound, overshadowed by the collective cry for justice. It was in that moment she realized that, despite their fractured friendship, they were both fighting for the same cause. But just as the rally reached its peak, chaos erupted. The police arrived, and the atmosphere shifted from hopeful to tense in an instant. Clara's heart raced as she watched protesters being pushed back. She felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet she felt a growing sense of dread. Would she have to choose between standing up for her beliefs and protecting her brother from the dangers that surrounded them? As the crowd began to scatter, Clara spotted Marco in the distance, his eyes wide with fear. In that instant, the weight of her decisions came crashing down around her. The fight for justice was essential, but so was her duty to protect her family. Clara faced a pivotal moment, one that would define her journey moving forward. She had to choose how to navigate the chaos of her world for better or worse, and the path she took would determine not just her future, but the future of those she loved. As chaos erupted around her, Clara felt time slow. The piercing sound of sirens filled the air, and the once unified crowd began to splinter, panic spreading like wildfire. In that moment, she locked eyes with Marco, who stood frozen at the edge of the protest. His face, pale and stricken, mirrored the fear that gripped her heart. The world around her faded as her focus narrowed to her brother, the embodiment of everything she had fought for. Without thinking, Clara surged forward, forcing her way through the throng of bodies. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself was resisting her momentum. The shouts of fellow protesters morphed into a distant hum as she pushed past them, her only goal to reach Marco. The sight of him standing there, vulnerable and confused, ignited a fierce protective instinct within her. "Marco!" she shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. As she reached him, she pulled him into a tight embrace, feeling his trembling body against hers. The warmth of their connection momentarily soothed her rising panic, but the reality of their situation loomed large. The police were advancing, their faces obscured by helmets, batons raised. Clara could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the collective urgency of the crowd now tinged with fear. "What are we doing here, Clara?" Marco's voice was shaky, and Clara could sense the betrayal beneath his question. "You said it was going to be peaceful." The weight of her choices crashed down on her, and Clara's heart ached at the realization that she had dragged Marco into a situation she hadn't fully grasped. The protest, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a reckless gamble that could endanger everything they had. She had gotten lost in the fervor of activism, forgetting the responsibility that came with it, the responsibility to protect her family, especially her brother. In that instant, Clara's perspective shifted. The fight for justice was still vital, but it could not come at the expense of those she loved. As she stood clutching Marco, she felt a newfound determination settle within her. She had been so focused on the larger battle against injustice that she had neglected the most important one, the fight for her family's stability and safety. "Listen to me," she said, her voice steadying as she met Marco's fearful gaze. "We need to get out of here. This isn't what I wanted for us." She could see the relief in his eyes as he nodded, his trust in her unwavering despite the turmoil. Together, they began to navigate through the crowd, Clara's heart pounding with each step. The realization that her priorities had been out of balance filled her with a mix of shame and clarity. She had been so wrapped up in her role as an activist that she had allowed the lines between her responsibilities to blur. The protest was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Her relationship with Marco was the foundation upon which everything else rested. As they moved toward the periphery of the protest, Clara spotted Rosa again. This time their eyes met, and Clara felt a flicker of understanding pass between them. Rosa, too, was navigating her own turmoil, and in that moment, Clara recognized the shared struggle of women fighting for their place in a world that often tried to silence them. Clara's heart softened, and she realized that reconciliation might be possible, not just for her and Rosa, but for the community they both cared about. Emerging from the crowd, Clara took a deep breath, the air feeling different outside the chaos. The adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, but alongside it came a sense of purpose that was sharper and clearer than before. She would fight, but she would do so with a renewed understanding of her priorities. Clara envisioned a different path, one where she could bridge her activism with her role as a sister, where she could empower her community while ensuring her family stood strong. This turning point marked a significant shift in Clara's journey, igniting a fire within her that was fueled not only by passion for social justice, but also by a profound sense of responsibility. The challenges ahead were daunting, but she felt emboldened by the realization that her fight could encompass both her activism and her family. She would create a space for her community to rise together, ensuring that no one felt abandoned in the pursuit of justice. As Clara and Marco walked away from the tumult, hand in hand, she felt an unwavering commitment to forge a path that honored both her convictions and her loved ones. The fight was far from over, but now she was ready to face it with a new perspective, one that embraced solidarity, love, and the strength of family. As Clara and Marco emerged from the chaos, the world outside felt eerily quiet in comparison to the storm they had just left behind. But the calm was short-lived as they turned a corner and found themselves face to face with a line of officers blocking the street, their shields gleaming ominously in the fading light. The tension in the air was palpable, and Clara's heart raced as she realized this was not a mere escape. They were caught in the fray once more. "Clara, what do we do?" Marco whispered, his voice barely carrying over the distant shouts of protesters. Panic flickered in his eyes, and Clara could feel the weight of his fear pressing down on her. This was it. Her greatest challenge lay before her, not just the physical barrier of law enforcement, but the internal struggle of how to protect her brother while staying true to her convictions. Clara took a deep breath, recalling the lessons she had learned during the tumultuous protest. She had fought hard for a cause, but now she needed to fight for her family. She understood the stakes were higher than just a confrontation with police. It was about standing firm in her beliefs while ensuring Marco's safety. Her heart swelled with determination, and she realized that her activism could coexist with her role as a protector. "Stay close to me," she instructed Marco, her voice firm. "We can find a way through this together. I won't let anything happen to you." With a newfound resolve, Clara scanned the area, searching for an opportunity. She noticed a group of journalists nearby, their cameras rolling as they captured the unfolding scene. An idea sparked in her mind. If they could bring attention to their plight, perhaps they could turn the tide. She needed to show that this was not just a protest. It was about people, families, and the very essence of community. "Follow my lead," she whispered to Marco. With a swift determination, she stepped forward, raising her arms to signal the journalists. "Hey, over here!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. The cameras turned toward them, and she felt a rush of adrenaline. "Clara, what are you doing?" Marco's voice trembled with uncertainty, but Clara pressed on, her heart pounding in her chest. "Just trust me," she called back, her eyes locked onto the cameras. "We're just trying to get home. Why are they blocking our way? This isn't right." The officers shifted uncomfortably at the unexpected spotlight, and the crowd began to murmur, their fear transforming into a collective sense of solidarity. Clara felt the energy shift. She was no longer just a participant in the protest, but a voice for the vulnerable, a beacon of hope for those around her. In that moment of confrontation, Clara's resolve crystallized. She stepped closer to the officers, her voice steady yet filled with intensity. "We are not your enemy. We're here for justice, but we also need to go home. Please, let us pass." The officers exchanged glances, the tension in the air thickening as they weighed the situation. Clara could see the uncertainty among them. They were just people too, caught in a system that demanded compliance over compassion. She used that uncertainty to her advantage. "Look at us. We're just two siblings trying to navigate a world that feels increasingly hostile. If you want to uphold order, then help us restore it by allowing us to leave peacefully." The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, emboldening her stance. Clara could feel Marco's hand tightening around hers, his faith in her unwavering. The world around them faded once more, and all that remained was the connection between them, a bond forged in the fires of love and activism. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of the officers stepped forward, lowering his baton. "Get them through," he instructed, his voice low but firm. The line of officers parted, allowing Clara and Marco to slip through the barricade. As they walked past the officers, Clara felt a rush of triumph mixed with relief. They had not only escaped the immediate danger, but had also sparked a moment of humanity in the chaos. They had transformed the situation from a moment of conflict into one of understanding, highlighting the power of their voices and their bond. Emerging on the other side, Clara turned to Marco, who looked both amazed and proud. "You did it, Clara. You stood up to them." She smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of joy and gratitude. "We did it, together." In that moment, Clara knew that the battle for justice was ongoing, but she had learned the importance of prioritizing her family within that struggle. She had faced her greatest challenge and emerged stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose that intertwined her activism with her love for her brother. The road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but she felt ready to face them, knowing that her strength lay not only in her convictions, but in the connections she forged along the way. As Clara and Marco stepped beyond the line of officers, a wave of relief washed over them, mingling with the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. The atmosphere outside felt charged, not just with the remnants of conflict, but with a palpable sense of solidarity among the crowd. People were no longer just protesters. They were neighbors, friends, and families, united by shared struggles and aspirations. Clara glanced back at the officers, who now stood uncertainly, the cameras still capturing the moment. They had inadvertently become part of a narrative that illuminated the human experience behind the political turmoil. In the days that followed, Clara's decision to confront the officers resonated far beyond that moment. News outlets picked up the story, showcasing her bravery and the poignant plea for peace and understanding. Clara found herself at the center of a burgeoning movement, her voice amplified through social media and community forums. She was invited to speak at gatherings, sharing her experience and the importance of compassion in activism. It was a whirlwind of recognition, but for Clara the real victory lay in the connections she fostered within her community. Marco, too, began to find his place in this new narrative. Inspired by his sister's courage, he took part in community outreach programs, helping to organize events that brought people together for constructive dialogue. The bond between them deepened as they navigated this path side by side, both aware of the weight their shared experience carried. Clara could see the transformation in Marco. He was no longer just her little brother, but a young man who understood the power of standing up for what was right. Reflecting on her journey, Clara marveled at how her actions had sparked a ripple effect. She had once felt overwhelmed by the chaos around her, but now she understood that one person's voice could resonate with many. The lessons she learned during that pivotal moment were profound. She recognized the strength in vulnerability, the power of compassion, and the importance of balancing her activism with her familial responsibilities. She had transformed from a passionate protester into a thoughtful leader, committed to fostering change while prioritizing the safety and well-being of those she loved. The secondary relationships in Clara's life also began to shift. Friends who had once been hesitant to engage in activism were now inspired by her bravery. They reached out, wanting to understand the issues, to join in the fight for justice. Clara organized meetings in her living room where discussions flourished and ideas were exchanged. It was heartening to see her community come alive with purpose and passion, fueled by the collective desire for change. As the weeks progressed, the movement gained momentum, and Clara felt a sense of pride in what they had achieved together. The chaos of the protest had given way to a more organized effort for reform, with Clara at the forefront as a compassionate advocate. She knew there would be setbacks, but the resilience of her community reassured her that they were on the right path. One quiet evening, as Clara sat with Marco, sipping hot chocolate and reflecting on their experiences, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had faced fear and uncertainty, yet they emerged stronger, their bond fortified by the trials they had endured. "You know, Marco," she began, her voice soft yet resonant, "we've learned that while we fight for justice, we must also nurture our relationships. It's the love and support we share that empowers us to make a difference." Marco nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "And we can do it together, Clara, no matter what happens next." In that moment, Clara realized that their journey was far from over. They would continue to advocate for change, but they would do so as a united front, with love and compassion guiding their actions. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but they were equipped with a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. As Clara and Marco stepped into the future, they carried with them the lessons of resilience, empathy, and the importance of community. Clara understood that her journey was not just about seeking justice. It was about building a life enriched by the love of family and the support of friends. They were not just survivors of a chaotic moment, but pioneers of a movement grounded in hope and humanity. The world outside was still filled with uncertainty, but Clara felt ready to face it. She knew that together they could navigate whatever lay ahead, armed with the strength of their convictions and the warmth of their shared bond. They had emerged from the storm, not just unscathed but transformed, ready to advocate for a better tomorrow hand in hand.